We know for a fact that a Hamas squad was firing mortar shells from the immediate vicinity of the school, from the school grounds. The IDF responded to that fire, and the tragic result was what we all know. But the IDF responded to mortar fire that was originated from within the immediate vicinity of the school. There have been press reports that quote neighbors who have been saying that they've witnessed the terrorists fire from within the school.
Christopher Gunnes, people were using this as a shelter, so there is a question clearly of the UN's credibility being put in here if this is true.
Let me say something which I'm sure will do something to shore up our credibility. We have done an initial investigation, Fanula, and we are 99.9% certain that there were no militants, there were no militant activities in the school or in the school compound. I noticed that Yigal says within the vicinity, and the IDF statement fudges the issue of whether they were compound in the school where they were. UNRWA is responsible for its compounds and its facilities.
Yigal Palmor has just said they were inside the school grounds.
Can you confirm that?
I said the immediate vicinity. I can't. Well, the immediate vicinity means right next to the wall. What wall exactly, I'm not in a position to say now. But sticking with their back to the wall of the school can be the school grounds or technically outside the fence, but still within the immediate vicinity of the school.
Yigal, I've got to nail you on this. Were they in an UNRWA compound or not? If they were...
Well, once again, Israel is facing questions tonight about how another United Nations facility has come under attack in Gaza. Tonight, the UN Secretary-General expressed his horror at the attack. How will the country's leaders respond? Well, we're joined now from Israel by Yigal Palmor. He's the spokesman for the Israeli Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Yigal Palmor, the United Nations says tonight we gave the Israeli military the precise coordinates of this institution, this international institution, which belongs to you and me.
Yes, well, as the UN Secretary General said, the circumstances remain unclear. Al Jazeera has reported that it might have been a Hamas mortar shell. UNRWA spokesman tweeted that some Hamas rockets have fallen short today in that area. What we know is that this area, the area of the school, was a place where a Hamas anti-tank squad was active in these last few days, and we have warned UNRWA a couple of days ago to evacuate the premises because Hamas has turned them into battleground. So it might have been a response fire to a Hamas anti-tank fire, or it might have been a Hamas mortar shell or rocket. We still don't know at this point, and as the UN Secretary General said, circumstances remain unclear.
You've not mentioned the possibility that it is indeed an Israeli piece of ordnance.
Yes, I did say that a Hamas anti-tank squad was active in this place. They fired from the school and from the immediate vicinity of the school anti-tank fire on Israeli troops. This is why we've warned UNRWA over the last few days to evacuate the premises. It could have been a response fire by the IDF to anti-tank fire from Hamas from within the school. They have turned schools into battleground. We've heard condemnations from UNRWA and the Secretary General when rockets were found stashed in UN schools. This is yet another abuse of UNRWA schools by Hamas.
Well, the difficulty is that you've proved once again that it is absolutely impossible to deliver a forensic attack on anything without causing civilian casualties, particularly amongst children. And you'll have seen the pictures of the children being taken away in ambulances. This is a complete disaster for Gaza and an even bigger disaster in a way for you, because if you cannot do these forensic attacks, you must not do them. Surely that is right.
Yes, the pictures are horrendous and they are heartbreaking. I certainly agree with you, and I'm sorry, I keep hearing control in my ear. I don't even know if I'm on air. But the pictures are horrendous, and one needs to understand what is happening in Gaza. What is happening in Gaza is not what immediately meets the eye. You should show Hamas spokesman going on Hamas TV, and so they will distribute hand grenades to children and send them to fight the Israelis. There are many other such occurrences where Hamas actually states that they will use children to fight Israel, and they are taking the battle into civilian populated areas. This is why the level of civilian casualties is high. But Be that as it may,
Mr. Palmor,
we
allow me
believe
for a
that
moment.
Within the number of casualties, the majority are armed gunmen by Hamas.
Mr. Palmor, let's have an interview here, not a lecture. Let's be perfectly clear here. I've been in Gaza for the last 2 days, and I have to tell you that this is one of the most densely populated places I have ever been. And everybody is in hiding. Everybody is taking shelter. People are sheltering in UN compounds, and you know it. And if you are taking the risk of bombing these compounds, you know for a certainty that the consequence will be that you will kill children. You will kill mothers and fathers. Why not stop? Stop now and start talking. I met Palestinian after Palestinian after Palestinian, many of them Hamas supporters, who want to talk, who want a truce and want a ceasefire. Why not talk?
Then you can say to people, well, they were there. If they weren't, let's be clear about it, be honest, be open. And by the way, say it to an impartial inquiry. We have nothing to hide. Bring it on. We want to see the evidence. We want to clear any suspicion that we're doing the militants.
Because we're going to, in terms of the evidence, you say you're 99.9% sure. So what gives you reason?
We had an investigator, one of our best people in Gaza City, went up to the area. We talked to community leaders. We talked to the refugees who were there. 1,300 people who were told, many by the IDF, to leave their homes. They came to the neutrality of a UN compound, and then this tragedy happened. We've had an investigator there talking to people. We are 99.9% certain. If there's any doubt, can anyone forward give us the evidence? The Israeli army is circulating ancient pictures which allegedly show that militants using our compound. It's an old set of pictures to show a new case. It doesn't work.
Well, who's lecturing now? Why are you not reporting that we have already agreed to a ceasefire? We have agreed to the Egyptian ceasefire and we have implemented it. We've waited for hours for Hamas ceasefire. We've let Hamas fire rockets.
That ceasefire,
well, thank you for calling me names, but we have implemented the Egyptian ceasefire and Hamas has breached it over a number of hours until we were forced to respond. We have agreed to humanitarian ceasefires proposed by the UN and by the Red Cross. We have agreed to the Egyptian current ceasefire. Hamas continues to refuse. There is an Egyptian plan for a ceasefire which everybody supports, including Israel, and Hamas keeps rejecting it.
Mr. Palmor, this is an absolute miasma, and you know because you work in the foreign ministry yourself. The Egyptians have no contact with Hamas, made no contact with them about that ceasefire. That was not a ceasefire. You have to find a way of having a ceasefire, surely.
The Egyptian plan for a ceasefire is the only game in town. There is no other plan, and there is no other diplomatic possibility to find a diplomatic way to stop this. When the Egyptians proposed the ceasefire, they did contact Hamas. Maybe they did not contact everyone in Hamas, not Hamas within Gaza and Hamas in Qatar and some Hamas activists in Lebanon and all the Hamas people who are everywhere and who want to have their word, they want to have their say in the future agreement. I makes the calls and who calls the shots for Hamas. It's not for me to say. Well, the Egyptians are doing whatever they can. We have agreed to a plan that is supported by the international community.
Thank you very much indeed.
The agency that runs the school has strongly criticised and condemned the hit and has actually accused Israel of violating international law. This is Chris Gunnes, who we heard from. He is a spokesman for the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestine Rif in the Near East, and he spoke to our diplomatic editor, James Bates. Have a look.
Shock, indignation, words simply can't express how appalling we all felt. That's why we've condemned this in the strongest possible terms as a serious violation of international law. We've moved away from the realm of humanitarian action alone. We're now in the realm of accountability.
Are you sure which side was responsible?
We have done crater analysis. We got a team to the site within hours. We've looked at the shrapnel. We've looked at the damage. We are, according to our assessment, saying that this is Israeli artillery, and we have no doubt about that.
Is it possible this could have been an accident? They didn't know where the school was?
Well, as far as intentionality is concerned, of course, you'd need to ask the Israeli army. We have seen a school hit directly. Children sleeping next to their parents on the floor of a UN-designated safe area have been killed. It is an affront to the humanity of all of us. The world should hang its head in shame.
About the location of this school and how many people were inside?
17 times we called to give them the precise coordinates of this school and to inform them of the fact that 3,300 people had taken refuge there. So that is certainly not an excuse that can be given.
This is the second time this has happened with a large loss of life. How should the international community respond?
Well, we've made it quite clear that it's time for accountability. We've made it quite clear that those with the power to act should take deliberate political action. It's up to them, but it's got to stop. I mean, we have reached breaking point. We've moved away from the realm of humanitarian action alone. Our staff are being killed, our shelters are completely overrun, the Israelis are telling more people to leave, so there will soon be tens of thousands of people stranded in the streets of Gaza. No food, no shelter, no mattresses, no blankets. We are overwhelmed by this. There has to be concerted political action.
You are a senior UN official. You were, before that, a long time, you were a journalist, a professional journalist. So you're used to seeing these sort of things. But how does it affect you when you see what has happened on the ground in Gaza today? It's
beyond belief that in the 21st century, children and women, men, civilian men, can be subjected to this kind of outrage. Palestinians have every single one of their rights denied them, including the right to life, and that includes children. It is an abomination, it's a barbarity, and it needs to end.
Well, joining us now is Christopher Gunness from the United Nations Relief and Works Agency. Good evening to you. The Israeli Foreign Minister, Tzipi Livni, has said, quote, "There is no humanitarian crisis in Gaza." Do you share that view?
That is utter nonsense, and I think any of your viewers and anyone in the world looking at the pictures of the women and children screaming, of the bodies of babies on the mortuary floors in Gaza, the fact that 1 million people don't have electricity, 750,000 people don't have water, people are burning their furniture, middle-income families are burning their furniture for food, hospitals are run 24/7 on emergency generators, we have just days of food supplies. If that isn't a humanitarian crisis, then tell me what is. I think it has to be said that what Israel is saying is give us some more time. Well, Mr. Ban has said, the Secretary-General has said there is no more time. He comes with, I think, two very distinct messages. One, anyone now defying the ceasefire is acting in isolation of the world community, because Israel has said, you know, there's international consensus. Well, there isn't international consensus for this, and the Security Council has spoken with one voice. I think the other main message for Mr. Ban's visit is, for every bomb that drops now, the job of the peacemakers, and that will include Israel, and it will include the Palestinian side, is made that much more complicated. So stop the bombs. I mean, obviously civilians are suffering. Stop the rockets, because, you know, they're very unhelpful too. Peacemaking will become all the more difficult with every single bomb and every single rocket now that comes out of Gaza and everything's inside Gaza. Clear messages.
On a practical issue, Mr. Gunness, we've had these well-reported issues of the UN workers and facilities being fired on by the Israeli military. Has that been sorted out? And is this window of opportunity, the ceasefire that you have every day to get supplies in, is that working?
Well, the window is not working because there are firing incidents throughout these pauses. And the point I'd make is that when you are bringing food assistance to tens of thousands of people, you have to pre-position stock so that when this so-called lull, this window, happens, you've got food there. That means that our workers are in harm's way. We've given all the coordinates to the Israelis. They've got all the movement details. Everything is coordinated. But let me say one thing. I have in my inbox every single real-time email of every single firing incident on every single one of our workers. This will be used ultimately, potentially, as evidence in the application of international humanitarian law. So those things now seem very grim for our workers. Let me assure the world that every single email that we have in UNRWA, every real-time instance of where we were phoning up the Israelis and saying, please call off your tanks, our workers are being killed, every detail of our humanitarian, our medical convoys a few days ago, going in during the lull to recover the body of one of my colleagues was fired on. All of these incidents are being recorded. The Israeli army and the rocket launchers, by the way, are being very carefully scrutinized. And at the end of the day, I believe, it may take a long time, that there will be justice. And I hope that this simple message today be a constraining hand on those who are not respecting the neutrality of humanitarian workers and those who are putting innocent civilians in harm's way.
OK, we'll end it there. Thanks very much, Christopher Gunness from the United Nations.
Breaking news tonight. Israel says all of its ground forces have now left Gaza after several weeks of intense fighting. A 72-hour ceasefire.